So, right off the bat, we're introduced to this kind of different time frame or indication that we are in a different time frame. Case in point, we see Spider-Man on stage with Aunt May. It's clear that they know one another, and right after the fact, Spider-Man, that's Peter Parker, and Aunt May high five. It's very clear that this is taking place after the events of Homecoming. I think it's even more clear that it's taking place after the events of Avengers Endgame because of the fact that Happy Hogan comes to greet Aunt May. That's also interesting because if you look, and it flashes by, don't get me wrong, if you look at the check, the giant check that Happy brings in with him, you'll notice that it's signed by Pepper Potts, who is running, if it's still known as, I guess, Stark Industries or Tony Stark's company in his stead. But this is odd because of the fact that Tony Stark's not coming, as well as the fact that it's referenced many times in the trailer that Peter's alone and there's no, if not minimal, interaction from Tony Stark. And now, that's not to say that Tony's not alive still or won't make a cameo or appearance. It's just interesting that he is not seen in the trailer as well as he's not even referenced in passing. That also brings up the fact that we see, and I'm going to jump around, don't get me wrong, that also brings up the fact that we see Peter getting ready to go on his trip as well as packing up his suitcase. Now, if you look at the suitcase as he's packing it up, you'll notice the initials BFP. So I actually don't know what the F stands for as a middle initial, but BP would be Benjamin Parker. So the implication is that Peter is using his Uncle Ben's suitcase. It's a very quick, fleeting Easter egg, but it's good to know that the director and, well, just the creative team for this movie is putting that much attention to detail in. It's also pretty brief, but as he's picking up his passport, you'll notice that his birth date is listed as August 10th. Now, the initial appearance of Spider-Man was actually in Amazing Fantasy number 15, released on August 10th of 1962. And actually, I usually remember the fact that Spider-Man came out in 1962, or first appeared that year, because my mom and dad were born that year. So that's pretty interesting. But going back to Spider-Man, I already mentioned the briefcase, so let's go ahead and move to Venice. Now, once we're in Venice, there are a couple other Easter eggs as well. As the crew are on their trip through Venice, Italy, we see them on a boat that's passing by, and Peter Parker's friend Ned is getting his picture taken by a girl with blonde hair. I'd like to think that this might be Gwen Stacy, another long-standing love interest of Peter Parker's who's very critical to his development as Spider-Man. Now, we also see a boat passing by with the letters and numbers ASM 212 on it. So that would be referential to Amazing Spider-Man 212, which would be the first issue with Hydro Man's appearance. Now, even though these were rumors to begin with, the elemental beings, or I guess the villains in this movie, appear to be very critical to the plot, as in they're the main foes, to the point that, and this was a rumor for a bit, but that Mysterio was contracted by S.H.I.E.L.D. in order to help take them down, maybe because he has some information relating to them. We also see later in the trailer that Jake Gyllenhaal is Mysterio. One, he's got the fishbowl helmet, which I just am in love with, but two, it seems like he's actually got powers. Traditionally, Mysterio, or the original Mysterio, Quentin Beck, is a stage magician. He's great at using just pyrotechnics and illusionary technologies, sleight of hand tricks, etc. He even goes to the point of using hallucinogenic gas and taking things to the extreme. He's even faced off with Daredevil and almost driven him insane. But he doesn't actually typically have any actual powers. He's just very intelligent and good at what he does. But in the context of the trailer, it would appear he's flying around, he's got magic circles, etc. And these magic circles actually look pretty similar to the ones that Doctor Strange uses, so maybe there's some tie-in to the sorcery world, the magic realm in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I don't know. We might even see some tie-ins or passive references to the Sorcerer Supreme or whatever magic order that Doctor Strange was a part of. This would be a very great way to expand the mystic lore of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Once we go back to Peter Parker's room that he's sharing with his friend Ned, we also see Ned get taken out by none other than Nick Fury. This is pretty cool because of the fact that Nick Fury is, I guess, making contact with Peter, and at this point he makes us realize that he's actually never come into contact with Spider-Man up until this point. It also highlights the fact that Iron Man is, for the most part, as far as we know, out of the picture, and that Nick Fury is taking over. He's also seen with a female agent attacking another one of the elementals, and this might be Maria Hill, who in the comics does take over S.H.I.E.L.D. from Nick Fury, but it might also be suggesting that S.H.I.E.L.D. reforms after the events of Endgame. Once again, we don't necessarily know the timeline or where Far From Home takes place, where and when Far From Home takes place, I'll say, with respect to the Marvel Cinematic Universe continuity, but this kind of keeps contributing to the idea that it is after Endgame, which will be very interesting because that's when we enter the Marvel Cinematic Universe's Phase 4. But we see Nick Fury. This means that there's something going on with Spider-Man's involvement and the fact that Mysterio is involved as well, that they've got enough resources to be making this happen. Another interesting Easter egg that I don't know if this is just me just being kind of delusional, but when Ned and Peter are on the street, we see a sign that says Calle de Vento or Calle del Vento, which translates roughly into Street of Wind. Now, I know that's just, there are kind of little Easter eggs all over the place regarding elements. I mean, they're in the water, you've got the Street of Wind, you've got different things just going around, and I think maybe that's just a kind of passive reference to the elements in the movie or the elementals in the movie, as well as the fact that on some of this Venetian architecture, you have images of Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea. Or I guess since that's Italy and it's Roman, that would be Neptune, which is the Roman equivalent of the Greek god Poseidon. But let's keep it going. We also notice when everybody's running out, kind of freaking out, that they pass by a car that says 2865 SEP. So that would regard Spider-Man issue 28, which came out in September of 1965. This was actually the Molten Man's first appearance. Now, we see another elemental made almost completely out of fire or magma, so this is definitely tying into the theme of elemental beings and villains. Particularly because Hydro Man, I believe, was part of the Sinister Six at one point, building in the theory that if Mysterio isn't part of the Sinister Six, that Marvel is trying to build up to that, or at least I would like to think so, especially because we've already confirmed that the Shocker, the Vulture, and the Scorpion exist in this world. Maybe he's not the Scorpion yet, but Mac Gargan, the Scorpion's initial identity, was in prison alongside the Vulture at the end of Spider-Man Homecoming. It's also interesting to note that Spider-Man issue 28, which came out in, once again, that September of 1965, was when Peter Parker graduated high school. So I don't actually know where Thomas Holland's Peter Parker is age-wise. If this is a senior trip, I might have missed that little detail. But this could very well mean that because of the kind of time skip or whatever happens after the events or during the events of Endgame, that we see Peter Parker graduating from high school and becoming a full-fledged adult, stepping out on his own. That would also be pretty cool to see. We also get a look at Black Suit Spider-Man, which a lot of people have been forming speculations on ever since the teaser photos have come out. Now, the black suit is pretty iconic to Spider-Man, having debuted in the original Secret Wars when all the heroes were on Battleworld fighting against and amongst one another. This is later revealed to be a sentient alien suit known as the Symbiote, which, as we all know now, is Venom. However, the black suit hasn't always just been Venom. In a lot of cases, or I won't say a lot, but several cases, Spider-Man has used the black suit either for stealth operations or just for the sake of representing him as being in a darker mindset. I'd also like to think the black suit Spider-Man, obviously it looks a bit like a stealth suit, maybe also a little bit more heavily armored so he can take on the elementals or whatever other threats might be in this world or this movie. Because there are scenes with some, I guess, armed thugs or whatever just trying to light them up. So there seems to be just a lot going on in this movie between Mysterio, between Spider-Man, between where on Earth Tony Stark is, if he's even in the movie, the possible reformation of S.H.I.E.L.D., as well as now these goons that are shooting at school children. I don't know what to think other than that I'm stoked on this movie. But either way, with this black suit, it does kind of symbolize or at least suggest that he's going to have to do more stealth-based operations or at least need to be more heavily armored for whatever he's facing. And it might be suggesting that Spider-Man is legitimately either joining S.H.I.E.L.D. or having a chance to join S.H.I.E.L.D. or be part of a new Avengers team. This is all conjectural. Once again, these are based on some of my endgame theories, which will be coming out soon, especially if we get a new trailer. All in all, I'm stoked on this. I cannot wait to see this movie, especially because there was just enough in the trailer to not reveal the whole plot, but to just have you guessing about what these elements are all tying into. I mean, I say elements, I don't mean the elemental. Either way, I can't wait to see how everything plays out, especially with regards to Avengers 4, Endgame. We don't know where this takes place in the timeline, but at the same time, we already know that Endgame has a time skip built into the plot, and that there might be time travel. So there is no way of knowing what happens next. So I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. But thanks for tuning in, y'all. This has been another episode of King's Comics. I'm sure I missed some stuff in the trailer, so if you have seen anything that I didn't pick up on, or if you have any suggestions or feedback, please drop a line down below. And if you really like today's video, please hit the like button. If you really, really like today's video, please hit the subscribe button. And if you really, really, really like today's video, I don't know, post it to Gerard Way's Instagram, especially as Umbrella Academy is about to come out on Netflix. Please. But y'all, thanks so much for tuning in. This has been, once again, another episode of King's Comics, and I will see y'all soon.